The Wild gets set for round 2 of the home and home against the Vegas Golden Knights. Plus, everyone is holding their breath on news about Mason Shaw's injury. All that and more on today's episode of Locked on Wild.
You're Locked on Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked on Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. And just a reminder, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any of our new episodes. On today's episode of Locked on Wild, Alex Micheletti joins us as we recap the week and particularly the weekend against the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll talk Mason Shaw's injury, a couple of players that could pick things up a little bit, and potential for who goes where in the lineup as the week rolls on. My name is Seth Topal, your daily Minnesota Wild insider. And as mentioned, Alex Micheletti joins us for his regular Monday appearance. Unfortunately, not a victory Micheletti Monday, but hey, we'll take a Micheletti Monday regardless.
Yes, I'm excited for another episode here. It's getting the crunch time. We love playoff hockey, and so we're hoping the Wild clinch here soon, so we can just calm the fears of Wild fans and get to the best time of the year for NHL hockey.
Yeah, most definitely. It's postseason hockey is just a completely different animal, and the situation's pretty clear for the Wild. Win and in. They are in a situation where a win gets them the postseason spot. Now, they can obviously clinch without a win, but I don't know if we want to open the can of worms of going into the playoffs on like a 6-game losing streak. So we're not going to entertain that. The Wild did play Vegas over the weekend, and I think you saw just an instance in which the Wild did not have their best stuff out there on the ice. And some of that can stem from the game against Colorado, which they obviously got up for 100% to win that game. But you look at the Vegas Golden Knights too on the other end, and they had a real sluggish game that they played against the Sharks. And so I think it was just one of those weird situations of like the emotional drop for the Wild and the Vegas Golden Knights being like, hey, we got to pick it up. And I was talking with Kevin Gorg about this after the game on Saturday. Real good opportunity for the Wild to do the same to the Golden Knights here tonight.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call for sure. You knew that Vegas was not happy losing to San Jose. That's a team you cannot lose to. And so you knew they were going to be coming up, fired up. They were back at home. The building was loud. There was a lot of Wild fans there, which was really cool to see in the crowd. And they knew that they couldn't lose that game. And again, it's, I brought it up on Twitter too. This is the second time where they've had a devastating injury happen in that building. A couple of years, when they played Vegas in Game 7 there, when Jonas Brodin immediately got hurt, and then it just kind of derailed the game. And same time, this most recent game against them with Mason Shaw going down, I just think it took a lot of emotion out of the, it was really emotional for everybody on that team. He was, he couldn't put any pressure on that leg. So it was very sad to see just, after everything he's been through, tearing his ACL 3 times. And so, yeah, it was tough. They just, they couldn't keep it together.
Yeah, and for it to happen so early too, I think it happened 5 minutes into the game, and you have that sort of a thing happen, and we may all think, okay, just take the first intermission to regroup, but it is a tight-knit group, as we talked about last week on the show. It's a tight-knit group, and so you have a lot of guys on the team that know what Shaw has gone through to get to this point, that obviously felt awful that he went through that. Again, we'll be getting word later today, I would imagine, as to what exactly the injury is, but crashing awkwardly into the boards like he did, losing his balance as he did so, non-contact type injury, it's not looking good. And so hopefully we get some best case scenario for him, but it's looking like he's probably going to be out for a while, if not the rest of the year. And so it's going to be next man up for this team. Next man up, next guy to fill in that spot. And the Wild have players on the roster right now that are capable of stepping in and filling those types of roles.
Yeah, you have to give credit again to Bill Guerin with the moves he made at the deadline, because he has Nyquist in his back pocket there, ready to when he's ready to play, and then a guy that you might have been scratched in the playoffs, Sundqvist, is going to have to play, and so it's one less guy that they have to. Well, we don't know for sure, but it could possibly be one less guy that they have to make a lineup decision on. And so, yeah, it's lots of moving parts. As we've seen throughout this season, guys have been on the fourth line, top line, guys on the top line that you would never in a million years think they are on top line in the NHL, but that's what they've had to do, with injuries. And so they persevered, and they're still in first place in the Central. That's what everybody has to realize still. They played poorly. It's one of 82 games. You move on, and you're going to be at home. And so that makes a huge difference. And we'll see what happens. And Gus is probably going to be in net, right? So that could be a difference too.
Well, and the other part of it that you can point to as well is you look at the goals that were scored by the Golden Knights, and those are goals more often than not that you want your goalie to be able to make the saves on. The Golden Knights, they got Fleury in the same spot every time, just that buzzer past the right shoulder, and he was not able to go up and get those types of shots. But the Middleton one, the first one where Middleton's stick exploded, that was unfortunate. And then you have the other two. And so on that night, those types of goals were enough. That may not be the case in future matchups between the two.
That's why this is the best league in the world, right? They do these pre-scouts. They know where goalies have a tendency to be weaker at, and they exploited it. And so, like you said, there was an unfortunate situation there with Middleton's stick just exploding. You can't fault them for that. But yeah, these two teams are very close. They've played each other in postseasons, and they love playing against each other. Both fan bases enjoy the matchups, and so it's one of those, like we always talk about, these weird scheduling quirks where they get them again after an off day, and they both we saw a picture from Anthony LaPanta that both team planes were right next to each other getting ready to depart to Minneapolis, St. Paul. And so, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. The last time these two teams played at home is when the Wild had a meltdown and had the players only meeting. And so, hopefully they can seek some revenge here at home and get the much needed 2 points to stay in first.
Yeah, and maybe we go to the point where the NHL does their schedule like Major League Baseball, where you just have series against teams. You play 3 games in a row.
That'd be insane.
That'd be too much. We did that 2 years ago. We don't need to do that again.
No more bubble hockey.
No. So it's just an oddity, like you said, and it is a big game for the Wild to pick up 2 points. I am selfishly, in my mind, believing that the Wild just did not want to clinch on the road. They wanted to do it at home in front of the home fans, and so that's what I'm going with. But it is a big game for 2 big points, and there are several players handful of players who can pick things up a little bit. We'll talk a little about Mats Zuccarello when we come back. We're also going to talk about a couple of the defensemen for the Wild who had interesting games against the Vegas Golden Knights. So we'll talk about who can pick it up as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after a word from our sponsors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Continuing today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day of the week. We had a big March, folks, and so I want to take the time to thank you for tuning in and continuing to propel this show to a pretty darn good level. Really, really appreciate everybody that takes the time to listen on a daily basis, and we're going to continue to crank out the content here as we move closer to the postseason. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti. Alex, we got to talk about this. We're in a group chat with a bunch of the other Minnesota Wild podcasts. Brett Marshall, host of Sound the Foghorn, who is frequently mentioned on here because of the ease of which he allows people like me to be able to understand the statistics that go into a lot of what happens and the analytics in the NHL. Brett last night, and I quote, here's the tweet. It was a brutal game at 5-on-5 for Alex Goligoski last night. According to Evolving Wilds on Twitter, they handle analytics as well. Goligoski had a 5-on-5 expected goals against of 2.485, which ranks 42nd worst in total expected goals allowed out of 36,676 total player games this season, with a minimum of 10 minutes at 5-on-5. He hit top 50 worst in that performance. And so you couple that with the rodeo that John Klingberg got taken on at the end of the game, it might be time to give one of the blue line guys a bit of a breather. We may be pushing a little bit too much into the Alex Goligoski well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I don't know if you want him playing playoff hockey. We'll see. They have some major decisions to make, and for one, it could decide the fate of Kalen Addison on this team going forward too. So that I think that's going to be one of the most debated topics other than who gets game one for goaltending once they clinch, because that one always dominates the headlines. So we'll see, but they can afford if they do clinch tonight, they could afford to rotate a little bit. You're seeing the Boston Bruins do it with their defensemen, and so maybe it's a good idea to give a breather and let them watch from the press box and see the game from up there.
Yeah, and the reason we bring it up is because it happens where a player has an off night. That's nothing new. This was like an all-timer bad night. And so that is where the suggestion to maybe give Goligoski a breather comes in, because it's not just one of those like, oh, he gave up it was responsible for a bad goal. It's like he was on the ice for, I think, 3 of them.
Yeah, it was a nightmare. The John Klingberg experience with the empty netter. I don't know what he was doing. He has those out of body moments, I think, sometimes where I don't know, he just doesn't think, and then it causes a major issue. You can't have that in the playoffs. They traded for him specifically for his playoff experience and being on a power play. But he can't have moments like that, or else he's going to be out of the lineup if this happens in a playoff game.
It's the equivalent of a quarterback is facing pressure and throws the ball up to the middle of the field. Just doesn't see who's down there. Just like, I'm not going to take the sack. I'm just going to throw this thing away, and then it ends up getting picked off. Like, he was at the top of the zone, empty net, and was trying to pass to, I think it was the far side of the zone, but just never completed the pass. He was moving that way, and then just the puck was
just let it go.
It was it. And again, I'm going to characterize a difference between those two. Like, obviously the Klingberg play there was unfortunate because it led to the end goal. But that's one moment. Like, the Goligoski performance overall was a concern. So I think it's time to get Kalen back in for at least a game. Maybe you give him a rotation through, like you said, just to give some guys a rest. But I did want to also discuss kind of what the lineup looks like with Mason Shaw out. I had tweeted out a suggestion that involved Sam Steele going back into the lineup to the top line to fill that wing spot, because Marcus Foligno, that combination is not really working.
No.
And so, yes, Sam Steele is not Kirill Kaprizov, but Sam Steele has speed. And here's another point to keep in mind as well. Sam Steele wasn't, this most recent time in which Sam Steele hopped onto the top line, he wasn't demoted for bad play. He simply came out of the lineup because Marcus Foligno returned from his injury. So I think the last time Steele came into the lineup, he was playing fine up there. I think it's time to replicate that speed factor on that top line, as opposed to trying to be more of a battering ram, as they have tried here over the last few games.
Yeah, I really liked Steele's play in that Colorado game. He was forechecking hard, and he deserved to stay in the lineup, but it wasn't performance related. It was just getting Foligno back in there, and it's not working with Foligno, and it's causing issues for Zuccarello. And yeah, it's just they need to get him back on the third line, get him back into a checking role where he excels at, and start to get this lineup fully back to what it should be.
Yeah, and so then you keep the second line. You don't touch that line, obviously. No. Third line then would be Foligno, Gaudreau, and Sundqvist. Fourth line, Duhaime, Dewar, and Reeves. Duhaime and Dewar obviously have a lot of chemistry from last year. And I wouldn't break up Reeves and Dewar at this point. And here's the other part of it too. You go with that for your lineup when Nyquist is ready. If he does come back before Kaprizov's ready to go, then yeah, put him in that Sam Steele spot, because he is more of a top 6 guy that is capable of scoring. That's what I would do.
Yeah, 100%. That's what you're going to have to do. And then once Kaprizov is ready, you can, rotate, or, with Sundqvist and Nyquist, put him there. And Nyquist can kill penalties. He can also be on the second power play unit. So he's kind of a, jack of all trades type of player. And he has that speed factor that is huge. And that shows up in the playoffs. And that's why, Bill Guerin took that risk to try to get him, here. And, it was risky because he's injured. but he's working really hard to get ready for the playoffs. If he doesn't make it for the regular season, he's doing everything he can to get ready for playoffs because he's a playoff type of player too.
Yeah, for sure. And at least the last update I had is that he was practicing with a no contact jersey, but I believe he has progressed past that point. So it's getting pretty close to where we could see Nyquist go into the lineup, and that would be a huge benefit for this team to just add another piece, because power play's been a little bit of a mess. But I don't want to overreact too much to that, because you're missing your biggest play driver, your biggest playmaker. And so, yes, some of it is still that that element of overpassing, but honestly, that's been way better the last few games. It's situations I see of goalies just making plays, not lack of shots. It's just goalies making plays and preventing. Like in the Vegas game, I thought the power plays did some good things. It's just they weren't able to score.
One guy that I've just been so impressed by, and it was a guy that we all had our thoughts on why is Marcus Johansson coming back to this team, because we saw the movie the first time, and he's proven everybody wrong, and he's such a smart player. I've liked him being on that top power play. I hope they can keep him on it, because his vision, his zone entries, he's been phenomenal. And, he's shown really good chemistry with Boldy too. So I would like, not only are they playing together on 5-on-5, but it's fun to see on the power play what they can do too with that man advantage. And so I hope that continues, just with the way he can move the puck around on the power play and set guys up. It's fun. We have talked about the overpassing. we just need the guys to shoot it too. There's a lot of guys that are pass first on this team, but you're gonna have to bury in the playoffs because it's so hard to score goals, and everything gets tighter. And so, hopefully we can see that improve here.
Yeah, that would help. And I mean, you talk about those two defensemen, Mats Zuccarello, the other guy as well, that is just in a little bit of a rut at this point in the year. Obviously, no Kirill really hurts. Mm-hmm. And so, again, you can put that into that category of things that I think I saw you had tweeted something about this, and Brandon Micheletti, a K-fan, responded and said he just needs a dose of Kaprizov-itis or something, or Kaprizov-Cillin.
Yeah, Cillin. Yeah, it was Cillin. Yeah, Kirillson or something like that.
Cillin is.
Yeah, yes, that's it. I didn't know how to pronounce it, but yeah, it was the Cillin at the end.
Because itis is the disease.
Yeah, we don't want that. Yes.
I am not a medical doctor.
Yes.
So, no, that's one of those things too, is I think there are a few things that are just not having Kirill makes a difference. So hopefully he'll start to pick it up here a little bit, because you're going to need multiple lines to be able to score. But I'm not gonna hit the panic button at this point until Kirill gets back. If it's still a problem when Kirill gets back, then yeah, we can raise the alarms. But those are just a few people that can pick it up. And again, kind of going back to where we started, the Wilds with a win will clinch a postseason spot. St. Louis was eliminated from postseason contention.
Thank goodness.
Today. So that is something that we are thankful to not be in that position. So we'll finish today by looking at the remainder of the week's schedule. We've got a few interesting games coming up this week. And so we will take a look at who the Wild will play here as the week rolls on. all that's coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after a word from our sponsor. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by a product I use on an everyday basis, AG1 by Athletic Greens. Maybe you're like me. You want to be healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done. That is no longer the case with AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1 in a glass of water each day, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. It can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach. AG1 costs you less than $3 a day. You're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, thanks for making Locked on Wild listen number one each and every day of the week. Seth Topol joined by Alex Micheletti. We know the first game of the week, the Vegas Golden Knights again. Philip Gustafson probably in net, as you pointed out, Alex. What needs to change in your mind this time around against the Golden Knights?
Yeah, just the energy level. Vegas was just dominating battles, and they just have to pick up the energy level. I think being at home is going to make a huge difference. They'll have the last change, and they just it was a weird game overall because Vegas's best players weren't that great. I mean, you look at the goal scorers that scored. Zach Whitecloud's not scoring 40 goals a season. Either is Hoden, the fourth line guy. I mean, so they were having guys that were scoring that don't really score a whole lot. So just energy level, I think. And I think, like you mentioned too, it might've been, they were due for a letdown after, so much emotion in that Colorado game, especially late with the penalty on Jared Spurgeon, which was not a penalty, and to come out of that and still get the win was incredible. And so, I think just being at home is what is what they needed.
Yeah, that'll be just what the doctor ordered. I can't believe that type of thing is not reviewable at that point in the game, because you'd hate to have a game decided by something like that, which thankfully it was not. But yeah,
Right.
And I didn't realize either in watching that game back that the official that was in that spot had turned his back because he was trying to get out of the way.
So that ridiculous. How do you still make that call?
Like, just completely missed it, and then was like, oh, yeah, there's the puck. It's like, well, gee, from that point of the ice, don't you wonder if maybe it hit something first?
Right. Maybe you want to take a look at that before you make a game-changing call.
Yeah, I just don't get it. But after Monday, a little bit of a break. So the Wild won't play again until Thursday against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Pittsburgh is fighting for dear life for a playoff spot, one of the final 2 wildcard spots, because basically every team in the postseason in the East is already safe. And so a game on the road against a Pittsburgh team that is clinging to life will be tricky too.
Yeah, they've been scoring a lot of goals. You take a look at their offense. They have some just big time firepower. Malkin, Crosby, Gensel, Rust has been playing really, really well for them. Raquel has been great too, and they have Letang that quarterbacks everything on the back end there. But their goalies also have been giving up lots of goals, Jari and DeSmith, and so it'll be interesting to see who they go with. They had a big win today against Philly, who's just a complete mess, dumpster fire. Got their coach or observing from suite, which I've never ever seen. So yeah, Philly just I don't know. You're like thinking this, we got the win and get out of there. So yeah, it's you're playing some desperate teams, and so you're gonna have to have the energy like we talked about, and because these types of games prepare you for playoff hockey.
Mm-hmm.
They have the intensity of that when there's crucial points that that are on the line for seeding and just for making the playoffs itself. Once you're in, then everybody has a chance.
Yeah, and the Wild will finish the week against the aforementioned out of the postseason St. Louis Blues. They were knocked out by Boston in a game in which I believe the Bruins ended up winning in a shootout, right?
Yes, correct. The Blues came back, which I could not believe it just because of their effort. They were on a back end of a back-to-back, and the day before, they, for some reason, started Thomas Greiss. that was a gigantic mistake. He gave up so many goals. I think he gave up 6 goals. It was a complete nightmare. Yeah, they did not show up to Nashville, and so that was very surprising. They showed some pride and at least got it to a shootout versus Boston.
Yeah, and not only that, add in the fuel of the near Binnington Fleury fight that could potentially actually happen this time.
That was when we look back, when we do like a recap of the season, that game was one of the craziest hockey games of out of anybody out of the whole season, just with the amount of goals, everything it was just chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was definitely one of the highlights of the season.
A goalie chirping the opponent after giving up his 4th goal of the game.
Yeah, the Jordan Binnington experience for you, the heel continues.
It really, you got to make sure that you get popcorn before you go to that thing, because it's gonna be a ride. And so it's funny because you get like the Marc-Andre Fleury former teams experience. You've got Vegas, Pittsburgh, and then on Monday the Wild play at Chicago, and so you're getting a little bit of the tour of Fleury, but we're down to the final six games, and it should be fun all the way down to the end. And we'll see if the Wild can clinch tonight. I again will go back to what I said earlier, and that I'm choosing to believe that they just wanted to clinch at home. We'll see if I'm right, but yeah, I think that'll do it for today's episode. Now that you are finished with your first listen today, make sure you check out the Locked On NHL podcast to get the full lowdown on the fight to the postseason for the teams that are in and the teams that are trying to get to the big dance. Locked On NHL, make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. Just like with Locked On Wild, make sure to check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, you name it, we're there. And make sure to check us out on social media as well, as we keep you up to date throughout the remainder of the season and the push to the postseason. You can find new episodes of Locked On Wild every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.